So let's say Anna comes across some pretty incriminating proof that her husband Mark is cheating on her with another woman. Anna decides to confront Mark with her findings. She is hurt, but she has hope, and she wants to give him a chance to be honest with her. So she tells him. What does Mark do? He erupts. He says, I can't believe you're accusing me of cheating. I leave here in the morning. I work all day, and when I get home, half the time you're not here. I don't know where you are. You're probably cheating on me. Plus, if I was cheating, which I'm not, it would not be my fault because you are always too tired to have sex with me. Welcome to the world of gaslighting. Gaslighting is one of the forms of emotional abuse. It is when one spouse, usually the husband, makes the other spouse question what they believe to be true and their perception of reality. It gradually wears a person down. It hurts their self-esteem and their self-confidence. The gaslighting spouse gets exactly what they want. Their spouse becomes totally dependent on them and loses their individual identity. So are you experiencing this? How can you tell if you are? Here's a checklist of signs compiled by the online site Healthline. First, they insist you said or did things you know you didn't do. They deny or scoff at your recollection of events. They call you too sensitive or crazy when you express your needs or your concerns. They express doubts to others about your feelings, your behaviors, and your state of mind. They twist or retell events to shift blame to you. They insist they're right. They refuse to consider facts or your perspective at all. As a result of this, you have an urge to apologize all the time. You believe you cannot do anything right. You have frequent feelings of nervousness, anxiety, or worry. You suffer a loss of confidence. You're constantly wondering if you're too sensitive. You're feeling disconnected from your sense of self, as if you're losing your identity. You're believing you're to blame when things go wrong. You have a persistent sense that something isn't right, though you can't exactly identify what's wrong. You have a sense of lingering hopelessness, frustration, or emotional numbness. So if any of this hits home for you, it's time to get help. You need to talk to someone who can look objectively at your situation and help you know what steps that you need to take. Find a good Christian counselor, make an appointment, and go. There's help both for you and your spouse. They will almost never take the first step. That's going to be up to you. And today is the day to take that step. Well, David, thank you so much for joining us today on Thus Marriage Podcast. You've been on before. I consider you a great friend, and thank you for spending time with us today.
Well, the feeling's mutual, Kim. Thanks for having me on.
You're very welcome. So this new book, 20 Lies That Keep You With Your Abuser, I love the book. I love the style of it. I think it's so user-friendly. I guess I can use that word with it. It's easy to see what lie you believe and then what Scripture says, and then some great stories. And just I think it's very, very helpful. So let's go back to just the whole idea of codependency. And how do couples become codependent?
Now, codependents are trained. They're trained usually from their family of origin to become a codependent. If it's a woman, let's say, could be a man, but it's a woman. She sees her mom being a codependent to her abusive dad, her narcissistic father. Boom. That's 18 years of training, if not a bit more. Okay, this is how, I'm not living in somebody else's house. This is how it works. And so she learns her role, especially if the mom never leaves and just keeps doing it. This is how life is going to work out. Here's how you fake it. Here's how you give your whole life up. Now, also in the Christian community, as you know, Kim, many churches, not all, but many churches also train women to be codependents.
Yeah.
It's from the pulpit. It's from Sunday school. It's the word of God used in certain ways to indicate that you're to submit no matter what. You're to stay no matter what. If you keep loving him, okay, he'll change. The burden's put on the wife, not on the husband. That's not what the Bible teaches, but that's what they learn. So it's just kind of reinforced.
Absolutely.
And then finally, I think, women are more sensitive. They're nurturers by nature. They don't want to get a divorce. And so they're just naturally, their bent is to be codependent and to give, every part of themselves to this guy. and they're pretty sure that's going to change them. It's not going to, not this time.
No, no, and I think that's so interesting you talked about the family of origin, because really, if you grow up with that, that's your normal. I mean, that's your textbook,
Yeah,
right, of what it is to be a wife in a marriage, and so you can see how that just transfers from one generation to another till somebody says, "Whoa, this isn't right," you know. And I think too, you said that about some churches, and I had a lady that she went to her pastor to talk for her. She had visible bruises, and the pastor said, "You stay in there. You're supposed to serve him," all this kind of stuff. And honestly, I told her, I said, "Get out of that church. You need to be in a church where you're loved, where God's word is given to you like it is supposed to be, like God
yeah,
meant it to be. And God didn't mean for you to be abused." And so I don't know where those churches get there. I hope there's very few of them, if any. I hope they're not anymore. But when someone has grown up in a codependent home, and then your pastor reinforces that, that's really hard, isn't it?
it is. It's like a done deal. Where do I turn? My own people I can't turn to him or his people because they're on his side. And now my pastor, and pastors' words carry a lot of weight. I'm with you.
Absolutely.
I've told many women, even this past week, yeah, find a new pastor.
Yeah.
On your way out of the relationship, you may not leave right now, but find a pastor that gets it. Yeah, he doesn't care about you, and he's never going to get it. A guy like that.
Yeah, and there are pastors that get it, and there are pastors that will walk through you and probably put you with someone else to mentor you, or someone that's been through those things. I mean, yeah, reach out. Don't feel like you're stuck there. So, okay, so how does codependency begin to play out? What's it look like in a marriage?
And it looks like one person, let's say it's the wife, whoever the codependent is, giving up literally everything about her
Mm,
in the hopes of changing her spouse. And it really becomes an addiction because it takes on a life of its own. I'm going to give up who I am, my identity, what I think, what I feel, my hopes, my dreams, pretty much everything. Compromising every time to love this man and hopefully getting to change into the person I want him to be. Even if you're married to a decent guy, and frankly, in this context, you're not, even with a decent guy, God doesn't tell you to do that. One flesh is not one person, it is two distinct personalities changing and growing for the sake of the relationship, but we still have two individuals.
yes.
The codependent gives everything up. And that's why you have no voice, you have nothing, and your own kids lose respect and love for you because you don't make a difference. It's all about the abuser. Well, that's what it looks like, and it's ugly. It's sad, is what it is.
I'm glad you brought up about the kids. I've heard that from a couple of people. It may more than that, even in the last year. Of my kids don't respect me anymore. And I think
Yeah.
that I think sometimes we forget what we are then modeling. What in this instance a woman is modeling for her kids. And again, how does that affect the kids? How does it affect a boy or and a girl differently when they see their mom in that situation?
I think it does. The boy, of course, they both lose respect, but the girl is more likely to model after the mom
Hmm.
and become like her, and so date and marry abusers and narcissists. The boy loses all respect for the mom. He's identifying with dad because dad is everything when you're a boy and growing up. So he'll treat the mom badly, and he will then become an abuser. He'll start abusing his mother.
Mm.
And this isn't the usual teenager with a bad attitude and a mouth.
Right.
Oh no, this is far beyond that. I am downgrading you. And of course, the dad will not defend the mom. If
Sure.
I tried that with my mother, oh, my dad would have taken my head off. That
Me
was
too.
never allowed. Oh, this is different. And so he's going to become an abuser. He's going to marry a woman and abuse her. That's exactly what happens. And these ladies that stay too long, it's the saddest thing in the world, Kim. You've seen it. You just mentioned it. I hear it almost every day. Of course, I'm still married, or maybe I finally left, but my kids have no respect for me. They sided with the abuser. They can't believe it's happened. Can't
Yeah.
they see? No, no, no. He has, in addition to the modeling and the lack of respect we've talked about, the guy has spent decades in very subtle ways turning them against you.
Absolutely. And it's
So
just
you're,
kind of it is. It's just kind of brainwashing them day after day
yeah,
till they see it that way. And so,
yeah,
yeah, one thing I thought of when you were saying that about when you when a woman continues to stay in. It seems like when that codependency is there, I don't see the resentment towards this husband that I see in a woman who is not codependent and her husband just trying to maybe, control her a little bit, and she digs her feet in and says, no, I can't do this. Do you see that there's the resentment's not there because they are trying to do what they think they're supposed to do?
Yeah, it's true. It's not there. You would think it would be.
Yeah.
So my job is to develop some resentment, some healthy. I've had enough resentment, and it's not easy to do. They've created their own reality, and there's in such denial that they don't get it.
Yeah.
I don't think they're being mistreated, or if they do, it's like, well, this is just the way it is. And it's like hope springs eternal. The sun will come up tomorrow. Yeah, it will, but it's going to be the same dumb day. But they keep living, hoping, dreaming. No, leave him. I got to get them ready to leave. He's still not going to change. He might if you leave, but it's not about him anymore. I say it's about you and your kids. And boy,
Absolutely.
It's a tough sell. It's a tough sell, but I'm selling it.
Well, and I think, I agree. I think women, they do so much. They want it to work. And of course, the classic abuser, he gives them a little hope, just kind of dangles it out there.
He does.
And then he pulls it away.
Yep.
But I think for a woman, like you said, wants her marriage to work, it's hard for her to make that break, right?
Oh, it is. These ladies, and I hear this from almost every lady I talk to. Dr. Clarke, I don't want a divorce. I say, I know you don't. I don't want that either. But the reality is that's probably what's going to happen. They know that. That's where we're headed. Because they know these ladies aren't dumb. In fact, they're bright. They know he's not going to change. To face that reality, or very likely, then I have to act this way, and then I'm going to have to leave. And they don't want to do that. So staying becomes the better option, even though they're being destroyed.
Yeah, just day by day, over and over.
And then they're told by the pastor, who's got it wrong, or 80 family members, well, God's going to honor you. He's going to bless you. You're glorifying him by staying. And you did your best for 40 years. I say, no, you didn't. God is not glorified by that. He still loves you. You're going to heaven.
Right.
But he doesn't want you to suffer like that. He does not. It's not his plan.
No, and that's not a marriage. If you even look at, God's definition of marriage, that template doesn't fit over what we're talking about.
No, it's not even close.
Yeah.
Not even close. Yeah.
So the codependency, what happens if it's not unchecked? Where's it going to go?
It is damage, Kim, as you know, across the board. Every lady I talk to has physical problems, autoimmune problems, heart issues, kidney issues. My back's killing me, ruptured discs. Had a lady just today, gastrointestinal problems. She's a workout person. She is a fitness instructor. It's killing her. So physical damage, emotional damage, self-esteem gone, self-respect gone, confidence shattered, identity, forget it. We have spiritual issues. There's almost always a tension with God. Why, God, are you allowing this? To which I say, God's telling you to get out. But there's an issue with God. And then, of course, we always mention that the problem with kids, they'll be turned against you. They'll identify with the abuser. He usually has more money, and he's prepared them that way, and they're identifying with him. It's just one bad thing after the other. So there's nothing good about staying with an abuser. Nothing.
Yeah, I really don't think a lot, but I've when you start mentioning some of the physical things that go on, that kind of stress just wears and tears at you. I mean, it's just, and I think sometimes we don't. Your opinion on this, that women don't realize that's where it's coming from. It's like, yeah, my stomach is killing me every day, but they don't think it's because you're in an abusive relationship.
They don't make that connection. That's our job. No, I direct, and they're always shocked. Really? Yeah. Again, that's denial. Where else is it coming from? Right? You like your job and your kids and all. No, it's him. But see, again, if they make that connection, that's the first step towards, I'm living with an abuser. I'm going to have to do something about this. And women, of course, this is a joke in our family. When I get a cold, it's a federal case. Call the Coast Guard, call the hospital. I mean, I'm just pathetic. And Sandy, when she could have a leg torn off and she wouldn't complain and she just keep going. Yeah. So women are just used to it. Of course, I saw childbirth 4 times. Oh my goodness. I can't even, you can take that. You can take a lot. But this is like childbirth every minute of the day. That's why PTSD, they all have PTSD because it's like a combat zone every dumb day.
Yeah, it really is, isn't it? I mean, and you just, the uncertainty that comes along with that, feeling like you got to walk on eggshells. And I've had more than women tell me that they are doing fine until they hear that garage door go up in the evening and they know he's home, and then the stomach knots or something. They begin to get that physical symptom because they don't know what's coming in the door.
Right. He could be nice if he's having a nice day, or he could not be. Or he could start off nice, but it turns on a dime.
Yeah. And no matter what you do, you can't stop it, right? I mean, you can have the house look immaculate. The kids can all be sitting there perfect. Everything's like his favorite dinner, and it doesn't, at times, it doesn't make a difference.
It doesn't. You know what? Life isn't perfect, but it's not nothing about you and the kids anyway. It's all about him, the kind of day he had. And it's like kicking the dog. He's going to take it out on you. And it's going to be your fault, which is ridiculous. It's his dumb fault.
Right. And you'll never be good enough in his eyes.
No.
He's not
Women have a way of thinking, if it is my fault, they'll embrace it. If it's my fault, then I can change. And if I make these changes, then it'll be okay. Then he'll change. It's got nothing to do with that. You can spend 40 years trying, beating yourself to death against a wall. Don't do that. Don't do that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we get a lot of questions from spouses who've been taught it's biblical to stay in their marriage no matter what. Let's talk a biblical framework for getting safe from an abusive situation in marriage. How do we help them get past that?
And of course, great point, Ken. The Bible is critically important. I wouldn't recommend anything, neither would you, that wasn't solidly biblical.
Absolutely.
This isn't taught in churches, but we see the verses, Matthew 18, Romans 16, 1 Corinthians 5, that indicate you get away from, you leave an unrepentant sinner. After giving the opportunity to confront and to change, which in our cases has been years, in some cases decades of opportunities, he's never going to change, it could care less. Okay, you leave that person. That's what those verses teach. It happens to be people make an exception. Well, that doesn't mean the spouse. No, there's no caveats in those verses. Okay, it's your spouse. Even more reason to get away because he does more damage than the guy down the street or your crazy mother or somebody else, one of your kids. So we have those verses. Then we have the verses, the 3 exceptions for divorce in the Bible, which the church doesn't like to talk about for fear that if I mention those, well, that's going to encourage people to get divorced. That's baloney. None of us want people to get divorced. Really?
No.
We have adultery, Matthew 19. We have 1 Corinthians 7:15, abandonment by a non-Christian. We have chronic, never going to stop abuse, also taught in 1 Corinthians 7:15, other places in the Bible. So if those verses are for divorce, and they are, those are exceptions, extraordinary exceptions, well, they're also then for separation, which is as far as I go. Yeah, these are obviously a reason to separate. Then we have, God puts in the Bible, which he didn't have to do, the story of Abigail and Nabal. I mean, right there. And in that context, Abigail had 0 rights. A woman in that area totally dependent on the husband. Absolutely. He could have taken a sword and cut her head off, and nobody would have done a thing to him in the household or in the community. There were no laws against that. I'm the man. And yet God got her out of that situation. That is a powerful statement that you don't have to take this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think sometimes, okay, if you're working with someone and they're coming from, it's biblical to stay in no matter what, how do you help them make that transition to see what you just talked about, that there is other, because they probably never, even if they've read those verses in the past, they probably haven't sunk in because of what they've been taught and what they've been doing.
Yeah, they've got to, the first step is really to, read those verses and meditate on them. Because, they've never seen it in that context. It's never been taught that way to them. They've been told just the opposite. It doesn't matter what he does. Number 1, it's your fault. Number 2, you have to submit. Number 3, you have to stay. And then that's the right thing to do. No, it's not. God, there are exceptions in Scripture. You're living one. This isn't a decent guy who's got a few quirks. We're not talking about that. Forget it. This is a pattern. He's destroying you and your kids. So I have to, there's an adjustment, there's a whole mind shift that they have to go through. And I'm convinced, I say, you make this a matter of prayer and meditation God will speak to you. He always speaks through his word anyway. He'll find ways. Maybe he's using me, maybe a close friend. He will get their attention, but it takes several months usually for them to really go, okay, I'm realizing this. And then they'll say, but I'm not strong enough to leave. And all the other lies I cover in the 20 Lies book. Yeah, but this, yeah, but that, yeah, but the other. My job is to shoot every one of those down biblically, as well as my personal, professional experience. And then they start, okay, then they start a process of getting strong enough to leave. And that takes
Yeah.
months. Okay, well, let's start.
Absolutely. Take that first step.
Yeah.
When you're thinking, I was just thinking of the scripture that says the truth will set you free. If the scriptures that people have been using to keep you in bondage, you don't feel free. But these scriptures that you're talking about and will set us free.
Absolutely. And that's what God wants. When I tell them, look, whether they know it or not, anyone that tells an abused person to stay and uses scripture inappropriately is also emotionally abusing you. They're shocked. I say, yeah, they are. You're in a burning car. You're with your husband and your kids. You're all burning to death. And these people are outside the car telling you to stay in the dumb car.
Yeah.
Somehow it's your fault it's on fire and you have to stay. No. God says, get your kids and get out. If the idiot behind the wheel, your abuser, wants to stay, God love him, he could stay. Okay. That seems to get their attention. This is a very serious situation.
Yeah,
I'm not just
absolutely.
unhappy in my marriage. Lots of folks are unhappy in their marriage. Okay, get marriage counseling. 2 reasonable people, not that hard. This is a situation where no, you pretty much have to leave it.
We talked about it on other times that you and I have been together, but for somebody that didn't listen to those, let's define what abuse is in a marriage. What are we looking at? Because like you said, everybody has problems. Everybody's going to have some conflict. Go to counseling, you work things out. So what's different? How does someone know if they are in an abusive situation?
It is a pattern. It's not just here and there, had a bad day, once a month. It is a never-ending pattern of narcissistic, disrespectful, and harmful, destructive behavior exhibited by one person in an intimate relationship. Bottom line, the simplest definition is it's one person slowly destroying another person.
Mm-hmm.
It is hardcore. It is as serious as it gets. So far beyond your basic marital problems, you can't even believe it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And you just, what I see, I told a lady this a couple of weeks ago. I'd been working with her and her husband, and he's one of those guys that when it came to the bottom line, he really did do some work, and he is doing better. But I told her, you look different than you did. She looked different when she made the decision that I'm going to separate and he's got to get some help. But over time, the strength she's gained, her self-esteem coming back, her seeing herself through God's eyes instead of an abuser's eyes. And so now that he has worked on things, and I really feel like God's done it, and it really was God. He humbled himself before God, and God has changed him. I think she's in a position to walk with him and to build a healthy marriage now, where a year ago she wasn't. She just needed to be separated and to have that time to heal. And it takes time, doesn't it?
Boy, it does. It's a great point, Kim. The codependent needs time to heal. Now, the guy's got a lot of work to do too, obviously, but the codependent has her own work to do. Heal from the wounds. Figure out your codependency. Where does it come from? Get strong. Get yourself back. Oh, yeah. So ideally, it's 2 separate parallel tracks. Now, if the codependent does her work and the abuser doesn't, so be it. Game over. End of story. God will direct you, I'll say. And it could be divorce. But until that point, yeah, you've got to get healthy. And the 20 Lies book is really before leaving and applying the Enough is Enough book. Let's get you strong. Step by step, let's get you strong.
Absolutely. And it just changes someone's whole countenance as they come out of that. I don't think women realize, I've told women sometime at 35, if you ran into somebody that was a college friend or roommate or something, they wouldn't recognize you now. Yeah, because your whole countenance has changed with the abuse that you've been under.
Yeah. We should actually take photos when they first. It'd be kind of weird, but when they first come into the office, and then because it's like night and day.
It is
happy. Wow.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea because they wouldn't understand why we're taking that photo day one, but they're going to understand
Right.
it maybe a year down the road when you show them that photo and a picture of them now, and they see the changes that God has made because they were willing, with God's help, to make that first step.
Right. And of course, it's thrilling for us as therapists to see that. And God is even more thrilled because He loves them more than we could ever love them, and He wants them to be happy, to be joyful, to be at peace. Man,
Absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely. So let's get inside of a spouse who's mind of a spouse who's believing the lies that keep them with the abuser. You've mentioned denial. What all goes into that?
Well, it is what the codependent has to do. Of course, she doesn't want a divorce, and so if she's made that decision, and it's supported by her church and what she thinks and what she thinks the Bible teaches, okay, she's made the decision. I have to stay. All right. So everything then flows from that, and so now she creates her own reality in order to cope and to manage this situation, and that's where denial comes in so heavy. This isn't abuse. He's not a bad man. He had a bad childhood. I think, hey, today he was better. He took me to the park. He talked to me. He wanted sex after, but anyway, but he was nice to me. And okay, and so she'll look at the smallest things, or this is kind of sad. You've heard this given a million times. Well, today he wasn't abusive to me. He didn't
Mm,
tear me down. So even neutral becomes, hey, I think we're going to make it. Well, you
yeah,
know what? That's just not accurate thinking. So I have them. I know you do too. Tell me the story. Tell me the last week. Tell me the last 2 weeks, and we start highlighting the events. Wow, that's abusive. Really? Another time. That's abusive. That's abusive. Here's why it's abusive. What was your reaction? Well, neutral, or I blame myself. And so it's all about them, and what they have to do different. Well, that's just not accurate. I have a wife who's very tough and strong. We have a relationship like this, much like my mother. Sandy calls me on everything. If I say something that I shouldn't have said, or she's upset about something, or she has a need, yeah, she just tells me, and I go, okay, yeah, I'll change. These guys
yeah,
don't do that. See,
no,
they can't talk to the guy about anything of importance. If it's going to be a disagreement or a conflict, he'll bite her head off or ignore her for 2 weeks, and so that's out. So I have to kind of do it all myself, hoping
yeah,
that, and then she'll think, well, because I was nice to him these last couple of days, or I'm doing my best, that's why he had a nice day. That's got nothing to do with it. There's no
right.
connection.
So,
He's a dirtball, and dirtballs act like dirtballs.
yeah, yeah. So, I've got a question with what you said there. When someone's been abused, and so then the guy is being, in her words, nicer, but you still see abuse there. Does that be the worst part thing that the guy does to her? Does that become her standard for abuse, and then she minimizes the other things that you and I would both see as abuse?
That's exactly right. Okay, yeah, 2 years ago, 1 year ago, he slapped me across the face, or he embarrassed me at that Thanksgiving dinner. Some awful, humiliating, yeah, that's the standard. And so, yeah, anything below that, and that's part of the denial. Well, that wasn't as bad. That wasn't as bad. Oh, anybody could do this. No, 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 no. And of course, she doesn't tell even her friends typically about what's really happening, because they
Sure,
might tell her, "Well, are you kidding me? This he's nasty." Because the wife wants to protect the husband, make him look good, doesn't want to be embarrassed. I say, tell your friends. Start telling the truth. People you can trust. And that's a way
absolutely,
to break out of that denial. Somebody else telling me this is a problem. That something's wrong with that guy. Because she thinks
absolutely.
something's wrong with her. And of course, the self-esteem is so destroyed. It's got to be me, she thinks. I'm just not good enough. I'm not pretty enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not good with the housekeeping. I've had these ladies tell me, it's just tragic. I'm a dull sort of a person.
Mm,
That's what she's being told. I'm uninteresting. To which I say, why did the moron marry you if you're that dull? That's a
right.
lie.
Yeah.
And you're not dull. Well, I know you. I spent a few sessions with you. It's just awful. Come on.
Yeah.
Tearing someone
Absolutely.
down like that. Sandy could. I have a lot of quirks, and I talk a lot and say things that shouldn't be said. Sandy could take me apart if she wanted to, but she loves me, so she doesn't do that.
Right.
I mean, come on. There's no point in that.
Well, yeah, because the longer we live with someone, we know our vulnerabilities, we know our weaknesses.
Yeah.
But being a good husband and good wife, you don't use that against your spouse. You
No,
use that as
no.
information to help them or come alongside them. And what the abuser does, he finds those weaknesses and he just camps on them, doesn't he?
Right. Oh yeah, and they're sneaky smart. They don't make stuff up. They will do that, but they use weaknesses or some mistakes you've actually made, and then they'll just pounce. Sometimes mean, sometimes subtle, but the message is, yeah, it's really your fault. There's something wrong with you.
Yeah, yeah,
And they know exactly what they're doing. And it's entertaining for the narcissist. He loves driving somebody crazy and having that kind of control. He's sick. Normal people would never want that.
yeah. There's a payoff
Oh,
for him in there. There's a payoff.
oh, big time. And he loves winning the kids over because that's a win. And he can tell other people, hey, she says I'm abusive, but look at the kid or 3 or 4 kids. They're on my side.
Yeah,
So that must mean she's abusive, not me. Oh my goodness. Awful.
yeah.
Monstrous.
It does. It just gets me upset. I mean, it really is.
Oh, me
And
too.
because there's these precious women and that you see that have just been so taken advantage of, and it's mostly women, right? I mean, sometimes
Yeah,
we'll see the
mostly.
man, but most of what
Yeah,
you and I see is going to be the woman who's. And I think a lot of that is, don't you think? Because God made our wives as nurturers and lovers, and they care
yeah,
for us, and they fight for their marriages. They
yeah.
don't, like you said, they don't want divorce, and I don't think as guys we're not wired that way. That doesn't mean a guy can't be abused, but it
Well,
seems like it's mainly
yeah.
with the wife.
Oh, I think you're right. Women are by nature other focused. Men by nature are self-focused. Even a
Yeah,
good guy. I'm more thinking about me and my career and how Sandy can help me. I mean,
yeah,
that's wrong. And now we've shifted. Of course, we work together now, which is awesome. And we got to the point in our marriage where Sandy said, probably mid-30s, Dave, I've worked really hard raising the kids and helping you with your career. I think it's my turn. I said, what do you mean, my turn? I'm doing this for you. And so she's been wonderful with the camping ministry. She was on the board. She served. She started to do stuff for her because she's got her own unique personality. And it was awesome. And I benefited.
yeah.
So,
That's so good.
but I had to be led to the water because I wasn't getting it. I thought, well, she's happy just kind of helping me.
Well, the difference is you responded. Where
Well,
narcissistic
true.
never respond, he'd figure out some way to turn that back around and make her feel probably guilty for
Oh,
even thinking that.
exactly. And it is about me. And don't forget it.
Yeah.
I know. Come on.
Well, so we've talked, you've mentioned a few of the excuses that you hear. Any others that are pretty common that people might be able to identify with?
One of the big ones is, and we've kind of touched on this, God, yeah, I'm convinced God wants me to stay.
Yeah.
Women, more charismatic ladies will often say to me, God told me to stay, which I say, no, he didn't. And they're shocked. I don't like God told me, fill in the blank anyway, frankly, but if you can't show
Yeah.
me in the Bible where he told you to stay with an abusive person, I'm not interested in that. So that's a classic. I gotta thump that one. It's better for the kids if I stay. Women, moms seem to think that's true. Intact family, even if he's awful, that's better than leaving him and having 2 separate households. No, it's not. You are far better off with half the time with your kids, teaching them, loving them, showing them God's way, than when one house where that guy is just having a reign of terror, and the things you're trying to teach them biblically are just washed out. Of course, there's a submission thing. I have to submit to him. No, you don't. You don't
Yeah.
submit to sin. Or one of the
Yeah.
classics is, I can't, and this can be true now. I have no money. I have no job. I'm homeschooling. I'm not able to financially leave him. To
Yeah.
which I say, yeah, of course, not today. How about 6 months from now? How about a year from now? How about getting training, getting a war chest, looking at jobs? This is America. Why are millions of immigrants flooding in illegally to our country? Because this is the land of opportunity. If
Absolutely.
if they can do it, well, you can certainly do it. Not easily, but they convince themselves I can. Of course, they're thinking, I'm dumb. I have no skills. Nobody would hire me.
Yeah.
That's not true. I said you're bright, you're attractive, you love the Lord. That's none of that. You have abilities. See, they've lost all that.
Yeah.
Come on, you can so make it.
Absolutely. I mean, God gave you abilities, and He gave you, and I think it's them being able to see through that, because you're right, they don't see that they have any value at all. Why would
No,
somebody hire me?
I'm so beaten down. He's convinced them of that.
Yeah,
They need to get out of that. And I'll say, look, don't even look at it how I look at you. And I'm telling you truthfully, because I'm a straight shooter. Let's look how God sees you. And it's clear as a bell. In the womb, before you even made your appearance, He was creating you to be who you are, specifically with the ultimate detail. They've forgotten that.
I know, and it's so sad. So let's go kind of to the other side of that. One of your quotes I love in the book: "I want the best for you and your children. The best is not continuing to live in Christian codependent prison. The best is learning how to reclaim your identity, your worth in Christ, and your freedom." So, have you seen these women reclaim their freedom after they break out of this codependency and abuse? Just to
Oh,
give
I
some
have.
hope there with those women that are people are listening today and are going, "Oh my gosh, I think they're talking about me." But all the things that Dr. Clarke is saying that are scary, I feel every one of them.
I've seen it, Kim. You have too, and it's the most wonderful thing in the world for a therapist to see a woman flower and get her freedom and get her voice back and her identity and her health improve and her kids improve. Oh, it's the most beautiful thing. So yeah, there is 100% hope for the abused woman. Absolutely. Now, I can't say that for your husband. It doesn't look good. I'll be honest. I've had 3 narcissists in 35 years change. Okay, that's not good. It does happen. It'll only happen if you leave him. So I don't know. He might be in that category, but I know for you, yeah, your life is going to open up. Absolutely. See what they try to tie it to the husband. Yeah, but I can't be happy without him. I say, you kidding me? You're miserable with him. Count up the happy days with him. There's not many. So yeah, that has to be severed. This is about you now. No, he'll have his chance. Fair. And that's biblical. But yeah, when I see a woman come out of it, oh, you get the email, you get the phone call, and they're happy and they're thankful. And we both thank God, and it's beautiful.
Absolutely. And I think, so people will know, I think we've talked around a little bit, but we're not talking about divorcing. We're talking about separating. We're
Right.
talking about making a statement to him that this has got to stop if you're going to be in a relationship with me. It's about her getting healthy, and then see what he does. And
Right.
and if
Right.
he works on it and really thinks, but okay, so a woman makes that step. She's separated. Husband says, "I do want this work. I'm going to get help." How does she know if it's real?
Her changes, you mean?
His changes. I'm sorry. If he
Oh,
comes
oh yeah.
back,
Oh yeah, good point. And I had a case just recently, I call it fake repentance, which I also cover in the book. You need to make sure, because these guys are mad, they've jerked the rug on you a million times. He knows just what to say to you. Well, I do love Jesus, and I came to Jesus last week, and I'm going to church, and I'm talking to the pastor, and here's what I'm going to do for you. I haven't been affectionate. I haven't. So he'll give you a list of the very things you want, your heart's desire. And women tend to jump to it and go, oh, he's got it. To which I respond, those are just words. God could
yes,
care less. God says, I don't care about your words. I care about your action.
yeah,
And so you make him, and it's going to be 7 or 8 months minimum of you backing off, healing yourself, and then watching him. Does he go to therapy once a week? Does he admit his faults? Does he tell you all the sins he hasn't told you he's done? Does he correct the character assassination with all those he's badmouthed you to? Does he truly walk with the Lord? Celebrate recovery group. I mean, on and on. Figure out the money. There's a lot of things you'll see in the 20 Lies book he's got to do, and enough is enough too, before you could ever even think, well, maybe. But the ladies let him right back into the house, and they go right back with him if they're still living together. And then 2 weeks later, he jerks the rug.
absolutely.
And they're devastated all over again. Don't play that game. Make him earn it. Now, the right guy would spend 8, 9 months. That's why I say the best way to do it is to put him in a corner and say, I'm done. I don't care what you do. Whatever. I'm done with you. I want you to believe it. I don't care. Next Billy Graham, don't care. I said the right guy will never accept that, and he'll work like a dog with the Lord's help to win you back. The wrong guy won't. He'll say,
Right.
okay, your fault. I tried this stuff. You're not reasonable. See, because he doesn't get it. He has no idea the pain he's caused you.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think it's we can all say the words, but it's got to be backed up with our actions. And I think, was it Virginia Satir that says 7% of communication is in our actual words? It's the body language, it's the tone of voice, and somebody can kind of fake that for a while. I've asked women to pray and say, if he's changed, that you can see Jesus in him. I mean, you got to see a heart change. You don't see somebody that says all these words that you've wanted to hear for how many years. I get that, but you've got to see him live it. You've got to stay apart until you know that something has changed.
Oh, I agree. Let's make sure. I like that. You need to see Jesus and just stay the course. Oh yeah, and let's see. So there are cases where it does happen. It's just, in my experience, not very often. Yeah.
No, and it's such a, with this couple I was talking about. Oh my gosh, what a celebration that has been.
Yeah.
To get to that point, and it just, I love it.
That's terrific stuff. It does happen, but only when the woman holds the line. And then you just observe him, because repentance is always consistent. It never varies. And the repentant person will not bring up anything about you. It will be one of your faults. It's all my fault. Here's what I did wrong. And he'll stick to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And then you've got a chance to come together and build something.
Yeah, right. When he really gets it.
They're good for both of you. Oh, this is so good. Last question for you, since we've talked about your bride some. What is it you're loving about your marriage today? Man,
we are in a very good spot. We've raised the kids. 3 are married. 1 is still single. They all have got solid jobs. We have 1 grandchild coming. So we're empty nesters, Kim, and it's wonderful. We work together. We have time in the evenings, watch our special shows. Sandy makes food. If I treat her like a queen, she cooks for me. It works out great. And then I clean up.
It's
great. Funny. One day, she just stopped. She always cleaned up too, because I'm like my dad. My dad never cleaned up a day in his life. And my mom seemed happy. Sandy said, well, she never said anything. Just one day she stopped cleaning up. I realized, oh, that's my job. And that's fair.
Yeah.
She's going to make the food. So we can go out to eat, which I love to do. And we sneak off to St. Augustine, which is our little place to go. I can chase her around the house. I mean, it's just good. I couldn't do that with all those crazy kids around here.
No.
So life is good. God is good to us.
Absolutely. Well, it sounds like Sandy's a great lady. And it's just interesting, as you've talked about her a lot during this podcast, of how our spouses complement us, how God put somebody in our lives that we learn from and grow from. I've got a wife very much like Sandy. She's not going to let me get by with much. And I am so thankful for that. I mean, it bugged the heck out of me early in marriage, but now I see the value of it and that I'm better because of that. And that's what I tell couples. Yeah. You got to figure out how to work through things. We're talking about abuse. That's kind of a different situation, but the normal things of life and marriage, you work through that so you can get to that empty nest stage that you and I are both in right now. And that we love it and love that.
Oh, it's a thing of beauty.
It really is.
For abused wives, nothing worse for the abused wife than the empty nest. There's no buffer. I can't focus on the kids at all. It's just me and him. Oh, terrible. Whoa.
And like you said, don't think you're doing your kids a favor by staying in it till they get out of high school. You're not.
No, not a good idea.
You're not at all. This has been great. The book is 20 Lies That Keep You With Your Abuser. You can, and where if people want to find you, David, where's the best place for them to find you?
Best place is the website, and you can only get that book from me because it's self-published. So David E. Clarke, Clarke with an E, David E. Clarke, PhD.com. Just that easy. Everything's there.
Everything's there, and other things that David has done. A lot of great books, a lot of great resources. Thank you for spending time. Thanks for being on the podcast. Thanks for your friendship. Appreciate it a lot.
Today we are talking about gaslighting. Gaslighting can be a common issue when it comes to marriage conflict, and many people who gaslight don't even realize or know they are doing it. Today we're going to focus on what gaslighting is, the warning signs that you're being gaslit, and the next steps if your spouse is gaslighting you. If you are new to the show, we drop a new episode every Tuesday, and on the last Tuesday of every month, it's a special guest interview. Be sure to hit subscribe wherever you're listening so that you can join us every week. So Dr. Kim, what is gaslighting?
That's a great question. It's fun just kind of researching, and I think I'd heard this before, but it really came from a 1938 play that was later made into a movie, and it was called Gaslight, and it kind of laid out what we're talking about gaslighting today. But it seems like that term has been used a lot more recently in the last few years than it had been Probably certainly wasn't used a lot in 1938 or 50 or whatever. I don't think I wasn't there. So, but I think it's as far as from a mental health standpoint, it's manipulative behavior. It's used to confuse people and confuse them into thinking that their reactions are so far off base that they're crazy. It's making you think that you're crazy, and obviously it's not you that's crazy. The term really is defined. It's getting someone to question their reality. So someone does something, you maybe say something about it, and they turn it back on you, where you think, "Oh my gosh, did that really happen, or am I just crazy about this?" And it messes with your mind big time. And depends on, I think, some on your personality how much it does. But I've seen really strong people get in a relationship with someone that gaslights, and it just gradually tears them down, because usually they're wanting the relationship to work, so they're willing to take that on. And so that just fires up the gaslighter that much more.
Yeah, absolutely. And it sounds so intense. It sounds like that can't happen. I'm not going to question my reality. I know what reality is. I know how to perceive things. But the hard part about this is it's so subtle, and it does happen slowly over time. And so this could happen to anyone. It's small things. It's saying things like, "I didn't say that," when you did say that. And so it sounds so intense, but it happens in a lot of marriages, I think, even subconsciously.
Yeah, and it's when you say, "I didn't say that," and they say it in a way that makes you think you're crazy for thinking that. It wasn't like, a couple be in counseling, let's say, "Well, last week you said this." "No, I don't think I said that. I think I said, I don't think I used those words," as opposed to just making you feel like, "Oh, that didn't ever happen. What is wrong with you? Where did you get that?" That's gaslighting.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's manipulation, it's deception, and it can be really confusing. And the reason this is so important is what is said around us, what we think, what we believe about ourselves. It impacts us so much, and this is why who we're spending time with, namely our spouse, really impacts us and impacts our thinking and our reality.
Absolutely.
And so gaslighting is a big deal. And so I'm excited to be talking about it today.
I am too. It's an important topic.
Yeah. So they're kind of like some ugly cousins of gaslighting. If we have any psychologists out there or counselors, they might be wanting to email us as we're talking about all of these things and just getting real technical with the definition. So we want to talk about some of those ugly cousins of gaslighting, because we're kind of going to lump them a little bit together. So related issues that are closely tied to gaslighting, we can talk about those for a minute. So for one, there's blame shifting. So kind of turning everything around on you. Dr. Kim, can you talk about that a little bit? What does that look like?
Yeah, I think that definitely that can be gaslighting. If someone's making everything your fault, then, I think that's part of it. Someone not ever wanting to take responsibility, not wanting to apologize ever. If they're making you think you're crazy for thinking it's not your fault, it can be, I think a lot of it depends on how it's said, who says it, what the situation is, whether it becomes gaslighting or not. I think some of it is manipulative behavior. And that's not healthy for a marriage either. But I don't think in manipulative behavior, the spouse may be ticked off or angry at it, but they're not going to think they're crazy. And they're not going to begin, it's like, that's where he crossed the line is when, and I think someone who's really good at gaslighting continues to chip away at someone until they get them to believe that there's something wrong with them. And there's nothing wrong with the spouse.
Yeah, definitely. And that's the key here to gaslighting. Is it's one of the main warning signs is they wear you down over time is the key. So, which is really hard. So another kind of ugly cousin is invalidating everything you say, or kind of shutting down everything you say, which again to me is closely tied to gaslighting, if not a form of it. You've seen that a lot in your counseling room. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I think it's just I think it's a lot where I see it is someone that is maybe one spouse, and usually it's a guy in that situation, just doesn't get feelings, and everything's got to have facts. And so when the wife starts talking about her feelings, he said, "That doesn't line up with my facts." And so you're invalidating her feelings. She's trying to pour her heart out and tell what she really feels so you can empathize with her. And so, no, you touch that down. You just shut that down. And so all of a sudden she feels like my feelings aren't valid, and my feelings aren't valid with you. And so invalidating and putting people down, put downs. I think I've been with couples where one or the other, and I've seen it happen both ways with men and women, put the other person down and so they're invalidating. Maybe they've been with some friends, and maybe the guy is just a really good spiritual leader, and so on the way home, the wife just says some really cruel things to the husband about, you don't know how to lead, you'll never be like him, you're never. And so those kind of things can be very manipulative, and can probably, I don't think it's gaslighting, but I think it's stuff that really invalidates people, and that's hard. Our role is to build up our spouse. Our role is to speak into our spouse. Certainly we can confront our spouse. If there's a difference in confronting and saying, in that situation on the way home, saying, I love hearing him and the spiritual leader he is. I know you can do that. I want to come alongside you. I want to pray for you about this. I want to help you grow because I know you want that too. That's a totally different deal.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Before we move on, are there any other kind of ugly cousins of gaslighting that you can think of, Dr. Kim?
Oh, I think any kind of manipulation, and we're all manipulated all the time. There's an ice cream company in Oklahoma City that for years has run a commercial in the 10 o'clock news, and their business is just crazy what it does after that commercial, especially in the summertime when people can still get out. So is that manipulation or is that salesmanship? I don't know. In some ways, when you look at that, what they're showing on there, it's kind of like, I guess to me it's a manipulation because it makes me want to do something I really don't want to do, and I know not good for me. The thing is, wanting your way all the time. I think that can be where you don't really validate your spouse's desires, needs, wants, those kind of thing, and just anything that you do that is at expense of your spouse's mental health. I mean, maybe that's a way to look at it. How is this affecting my spouse? The problem is most gaslighters don't stop and think about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is the problem. And I think you bring up such a good point with the ice cream company, because we don't have to be a psychopath to be a gaslighter. We don't have to be a psychopath to be manipulative. Right. We're all capable of manipulation. And I would argue that we have all manipulated our spouse at one point or another in our marriage, if you've been married for longer than a day.
If there's any guy that has not tried manipulation with his spouse for sex, there's something wrong with him. Which is part of the things we do. But I think what we find early in life, with your kids, you got two little kids, they figure out what works for them, and they're going to continue to use that until his parents would come in and say, you can't do that anymore. So it's, I think with little kids, it's hard to call it manipulation, but sometimes it really is. They figure out what works, and they know how to get their way with mom or dad. And so I think we learn some of the things early. And so in relationships, we test that. And I think in a healthy relationship is where the other spouse says, no, I'm not going to fall for that. Yeah. We're going to be healthier than that.
Yeah.
But I think it's, we all want our way. We're all selfish. And so sometimes manipulation comes into it, which is totally different than gaslighting. Can it lead to gaslighting? Probably. Yeah. But in itself, I think it's just another deal we need to deal with, is manipulation.
Yeah, definitely. Another kind of ugly cousin of gaslighting that I can think of that is closely tied is just playing the pity party card. And so this is whenever you bring up something constructive to your spouse, they say things like, well, I guess I'm the worst. I'm the worst husband ever. I'm the worst wife ever. I can't do anything right. So you end up feeling bad and trying to encourage them when the conversation was supposed to be about you and your frustrations and your needs. And now all of a sudden it's all about them and making them feel okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's a common one. So what are some common examples of gaslighting?
I think gaslighting, I got some stuff from the National Domestic Violence Hotline. I'm not going to use the terms they use because that can be kind of confusing. But one of the things that we kind of talked about, questioning someone's memories. They say to you, you never remember things accurately, or are you sure, or you have a bad memory. Again, you're getting your spouse to question. And what they're doing, they're taking the focus off of what you're trying to talk about, because they may be wrong or guilty. Well, they're not going to admit that, so they put it back on you. Withholding someone that holds, they refuse to engage in a conversation. A person using this may pretend to not to understand someone so they don't have to respond to them. They might say, I don't know what you're talking about. You're just trying to confuse me. And so again, it takes them off of them, puts it back on the other spouse. Trivializing, this occurs when a person belittles or disregards the other person's feelings. They may accuse them of being too sensitive, overreacting when they have valid concerns and feelings. And I think that happens a lot. And I think it happens a lot with guys where it may not be gaslighting because we don't know how to handle some of our wives' feelings. But I think it also can be gaslighting when you really invalidate someone's feelings, like I was talking about just a couple of minutes ago. denial, someone, and this, I see this a lot. Denial of a person pretending to forget events, how they occurred, having denied they said something or they've done something, or accuse you of making things up. I mean, all of that is gaslighting. It's crazy. Diverting, say they question your credibility. So they might say that's just another crazy idea you got from your friends. And I think I've seen guys do that a lot. Wife comes and she says something, maybe she had lunch with friends, so you throw it back. Well, that's just crazy. It's all your crazy friends, and I told you not to go with them. All that kind of stuff. And then stereotyping, gaslighting techniques intentionally use negative stereotypes, gender, race, ethnicity, sexuality, nationality, age to manipulate them. They may tell a female that people will think she is irrational or crazy if she seeks help for abuse. And those kinds of, and I think there's a lot of gaslighting that happens in situations where there's abuse, whether it's emotional, which gaslighting is, or whether it's actual physical abuse. So those are just some of the things that I thought that was a really good checklist that the National Domestic Violence Hotline, obviously got that data out of the calls that they get.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting. I feel like out of all of those that you listed, kind of the core is just deception, right? So it's like
deception.
It is deception. It's different forms of deception, and it's creative deception if we're being real honest, right? Like these are really creative ways to lie. It comes down to lies, and the hard thing about gaslighters is they tell such blatant lies, and yet they seem so convincing. It's almost as if they really do believe the lies as reality. And you kind of wonder sometimes if it's an extreme case, they probably do.
I think they do. I think exactly. And they, because they believed it and they've done it so well for so long and they're so convincing, and you get into someone who gaslights is also a sociopath, narcissistic. I think most gaslighters are narcissistic anyway, but you get some of those in things. So there's no emotion, no feeling. Yeah, it can really get bad.
Yeah, definitely. And next week, we're going to talk more about like accidental gaslighting, which might be more of what our listeners might experience. But we do think it is important to bring up these more like extreme examples as well, in case someone who's listening, but also to look out for it because it could happen to anybody, right?
Absolutely.
So there's definitely different varying levels of gaslighting. Can you give us some extreme examples, Dr. Kim?
Okay, this is kind of an interesting. This is kind of like a thing that happened, not exactly. Husbands have an affair. The wife finds a hair in her car. Maybe it's in the seat she sits in, and maybe the hair is red. She's got black hair. So the husband would say, "That's Bill's. He's in his band now. He's letting his head grow. I picked it up for lunch Tuesday." Gaslighting would be more like, "Oh, that's Bill's, my band friend. I told you I picked him up for lunch the other day. Don't you remember? We had a whole conversation about you. Are you okay? I've noticed you've been forgetting a lot lately. Are you stressed with work or something?" So the guy's taking it totally off the fact that he's having an affair, and he turned it back on her. So I had a couple that I just talked to not long ago. The lady, she was in a marriage for 15, 16 years. She was gaslighted most of the entire marriage. And when I met her, she was so broken. She was like, everything, what do I need to do? I can't do anything right. All these things are just typical signs. This is a smart lady. This lady runs a corporation and is very successful in it. But in the relationship, she'd broken down, and it has taken about 2 years. Their marriage didn't make it because he would never change and continue to be abusive. But I told her recently, I said, you realize how far you've come, because she's a totally different person than she was. But this is, I think what I'm saying is it can happen to anybody. And that when you're broken down like that, you may function well in other parts, but I think it affects you, and certainly in your relationship, where she just was always trying to please him, to do something to make him treat her well, or to say something good to her, and he never would.
Yeah, definitely. And that was such an interesting example of gaslighting, like the affair example, because I hear that a lot. You hear that a lot with affairs. Is like the affair was kept secret for a while, even though there's evidence of it, because the survivor in that case, the person who did not have the affair, the innocent person in the relationship, was gaslit into believing like they were crazy, or they were irrational, or they were just too jealous, or they were being overprotective. And so it's a really common thing to happen in an affair situation.
Oh yeah, I see it happen with phone. Somebody texting all the time to a person that they're having an affair with. The spouse kind of notices that, and the spouse will make something up. Well, I've got this big deal going at work, and that's why we're doing this. And he makes up excuses, and then he finally said, "You don't trust me." Throws it back on her. What is wrong with you? I've always been faithful, and makes her think she's crazy for even questioning the fact that he's on his phone more than he was 6 months ago.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And it's that interesting, like even the examples that you've shared so far, Dr. Kim, like they're often like, they sound like a caring, concerned, like loving spouse. So like in their deception of you, they're coming off as like, well, I'm worried about your memory. Are you okay? Should we go see a doctor? Like, I know, do you need me to like write notes for you so you won't forget things? Like, it's as if
Yeah.
they're coming off as if they're trying to help, when it's really like, no, you're hurting me by being by deceiving me.
That's such a good. I'm glad you brought that up, because it's so true. It's not like someone who's physically abusive and he's hitting his spouse or slapping his spouse or things like that. This is emotional abuse. This is getting into someone's mind and manipulating it. And so, yeah, it's just amazing how that can happen. And I don't know that I've ever seen it happen in counseling where the wife did that. To me, I've never seen it that it wasn't the male doing that.
Interesting. Okay. I've
Yeah.
definitely heard of some situations where
Yeah.
the female was the gaslighter. What we've had some stories, some prayer requests come in and stuff like
Yeah.
that online. And then just I've come in contact with a few couples
And
where
I-
it was
and I
the
guess
woman who was a more emotionally abusive.
Yeah, and I that's probably true. I probably didn't see it as gaslighting, but I've seen women in trying to motivate their husband or whatever, and they tear them down as opposed to coming alongside and building up. So in some of those situations, it probably certainly could be gaslighting.
Yeah, certainly, certainly. So what are the warning signs? What are the warning signs that our spouse is gaslighting us?
If they lie to you a lot, and you don't see any remorse about it, usually if I've ever told, a couple of times I've told lies to Nancy, it just eats me up, and I've got to come back and say, hey, this is what I did. If they never admit their mistakes, marriage, we know that both people make mistakes. If they get really angry when they're criticized, sometimes they get aggressive if you try to question them on anything, and they come back with the things that put you down. Never validate your emotions. If your spouse is not able to empathize, validate your emotions, and they manipulate to try to control things to go the way they want them to go. I found a little a deal online that's called gaslighting red flags that I like. And so some of these were, you apologize without knowing what you did wrong, which I see that a lot of times. It's just like, I've got to make things okay. So, I apologize. Imbalance of power. One person has all the power in the family and in the relationship. They give affection, but then they abruptly yank it away and they make it your fault. They assign motive to your actions that are the opposite of your intentions. That can really mess with you. You're trying to show love, care, concern, and they flip that around on you. Most interactions leave you feeling small or ashamed. When you try to explain how you feel, they're dismissive. You're overreacting. You're too sensitive. They insist it didn't happen that way. They're rewriting history, like those kind of things. You edit every word before you speak it, changing any thought that they could possibly use to manipulate or misconstrue in any way. And then finally, you find yourself questioning your beliefs and opinions. If your point of view doesn't match theirs, it's wrong. And I have seen those play out. It was just a really good, it kind of covered all the bases and those kind of things that you see happen in that. And I think, again, every one of those was trying to get one person in power and the other person almost helpless.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that was a really good checklist. That was awesome. Just to, and that would be good to kind of like really prayerfully write down those things that Dr. Kim just said and say, is this happening? If you think it might be, to kind of prayerfully go about that. Some other ones just to kind of add to that. I would say if you're constantly confused after talking to your spouse, so gaslighters know that confusion weakens people. And so if you're like, wait, what just happened? Like if you're confused constantly after communicating with them, you kind of mentioned this, but a lot of times they'll throw in a lot of positive reinforcement to confuse you. Some people call this like a love bomb. So they'll kind of bombard you with affection and love, to kind of make up for the ways that they're manipulating you and to keep you thinking like, you need to say, well, they really are a great guy. Well, they really are a wonderful wife. Like, they just bought me all these things and showered me with affection and posted on social media about me and bought me a new car or whatever it may be. They kind of bombard you with love sometimes, which is really confusing. And then I think a big one is if their actions don't match their words. So they say one thing and then they turn around and do another. Another common one I see is they kind of attack what's near and dear to you. So for instance, if you love a hobby, like you love rock climbing, maybe they'd tell you like, well, you're not really good at rock climbing. You shouldn't do that. Or you look so silly in those rock climbing shoes. You look ridiculous. Or if you really love and care about being a parent, they'll attack your parenting skills. So they attack what's near and dear to you. So those were some of the other warning signs that I saw.
Yeah, I think those are really good. I thought a couple, as you were talking there, that I heard a guy say one time, I'm critical of you because I love you. I mean, if that doesn't just kind of spin you, I mean, because I think what you see in a gaslighter, the rest of the world thinks he is incredible. He's the guy that's always volunteering at the school. He's the first one to show up to do things. He's going to be at the prayer breakfast every time the church has one. He's going to do all those things because he wants everyone else to think he's great. So it's a lot easier to think she's crazy. You know me. I'm the guy. I'm at all these things. I donated more to the campaign for the church than anybody else did. No, she's crazy. And so they are going to try to make themselves look like they are the perfect guy.
Yeah.
And it's pretty easy because they believe they are.
Yeah. Oof, that's hard. Yeah,
it is
definitely. Hard. That's a good warning sign to look out for. So what is the first step that we should take if we feel like our spouse is indeed gaslighting us?
I think seeking professional help. I think sometimes when the women that I've seen that have come in, and I've had them come in with their spouse, where the spouse is trying to manipulate me into validating his claim that his wife's crazy, and then he'll back out of counseling so I can fix his wife. And that's happened before. But I think you need someone to help you see that you're not crazy, that the things that you're believing to be true about yourself aren't true. Certainly, I think you start with prayer and ask God to help you see yourself as God sees you, to be able to see through some of these things, and just to wrestle with God with it a little bit. But I think then having go to a Christian counselor can really help you. You've got to get healthy before you can really do anything. And so getting yourself help. Sometimes though, if it's really bad, you may need to leave. Yeah. And you need to be in a safe place for a period of time while you get healthy. Then you can decide if we do marriage counseling, if we try to make things work or not. It's hard, I think, for a narcissistic person to change. I've seen it happen, and it's been a God deal every time. And the person that was really trying, it's really hard for someone who's narcissistic or to get in these behaviors to admit that they're wrong or to admit they have a problem, because everything is built on that I don't. I'm great. So that's the thing. I think doing those kind of things would be really helpful. I think for you individually, not doubting yourself, trying to be more confident in your beliefs. I think you need a balance. I think sometimes people that are gaslighted kind of go into isolate themselves from others because they start to feel so bad about themselves. So they don't really have anybody speaking into them and telling them you're okay, those kind of things. I think having control of your thoughts and emotions can help you, just getting in touch. I think you can do a lot of that through prayer. And I think stepping back are the things that my spouse is accusing me of, am I really doing that? Are those really valid or not? And I think it's some of those things that you do, but I think depending on how severe the gaslighting has been, you may just have to take that step of going straight to leaving or taking professional help, because those may not be effective.
Yeah.
You may not be able to do some of the things. I think the sooner someone realizes they're in a relationship with a gaslighter, certainly if you're listening to this and you're dating somebody and they're checking all the boxes, just block them from everything in your life. Yeah. Don't get get into that. And if you're early into where you see your spouse begin, most people never get gaslighted, in my experience, while they're dating. The spouse is so good about pursuing, knowing how to get you to fall in love with them, all those kind of things. And then it starts somewhere into the marriage. Probably the first time you confront them or you have a conflict or something, all of a sudden this gaslighting kicks in because they think, oh, this person needs to know that I'm in control of everything.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I think those are the things that you try to look at yourself. Certainly a friend, you can bounce some things off of, a good friend. But then I think then your next steps would be to go to counseling, to get in a safe space. Certainly most, even a women's shelter, that someone can kind of help you begin to see that you're not crazy.
Yeah, I agree. And maybe calling a domestic violence place and
Yes.
setting up a meeting or having a chat with them, someone who's well versed in this. Or I agree. I think community and bouncing ideas are going to be helpful. But that's going to be hard if they've already infiltrated your community, right? And kind of taken over. But I think, meeting with someone on staff at a church, like a pastor or a pastor's wife, could be really helpful.
Yeah.
I know even in the short couple of years that New City has been around, we're only in year 4 of New City, and I've already met with a couple of women who ended up being in abusive situations emotionally, or lots of manipulation where I would say gaslighting was a part. And so, I try to be well versed in these kinds of things so that I know what to look for.
Yeah.
So the first time it happened, I was like, well, I think I know what I'm seeing here, but I want to get some more help. And so I took her to a domestic. He had never hit her, but I was like, that's not the physical abuse is not the only kind of abuse.
Absolutely.
And so I took her to a domestic violence center here in Raleigh, and they met with her, and I was just there with her as an advocate for her. And now I know what to look out for because I was able to educate myself. But I imagine at your local church, there's going to be a staff member who you can meet with, who can kind of walk alongside you with this, who is familiar with some of this stuff.
Yeah, and what I mentioned in some of the data that I looked at that's out by the National Domestic Violence Hotline, that'd be you can call that anonymous. Nobody's going to know who you are, but it can help somebody, can kind of help you get back on track and see what's really going on, or, what is this reality or not. Yeah. And what you said is so true. I've had more than one woman tell me, I wish he had just beaten me physically, because emotionally I have so much more to deal with. And I thought, wow. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's very heavy. And God doesn't think abuse is okay. And so if you are being abused, we will unapologetically tell you to get out and get safe. So can a couple who has experienced repetitive patterns of gaslighting recover and have an awesome marriage?
Yes. I've seen God work miracles. I never would ever say in any situation that there's not hope, because God can work miracles. I think the hard part in this is getting the person who's the gaslighter, the narcissistic person, to deal with their issues. My experience has been they usually want to move on to someone else that they can start over with and control. But if you've got somebody that says, I want to figure this out, absolutely you can. You can't do it on your own. And I think that's where women in situations where they're married to someone's a gaslighter, they try everything. They try, everything over and over, and almost to the point of what we talk about, the insanity. They keep doing the same things, hoping this time it'll finally get through. This time he'll really show his love for me. This time this will stop. But I actually have a situation in the last year where the guy came out of it and they're doing good. And he just, I think he would say, oh my gosh, my life is so much better now. I think when they're in that, they don't realize it, but it's hard.
It's miserable, but you don't realize it.
Yeah, you're pretty lonely. I mean, you've got everybody else, thinks you're a great guy, but, God created us for that intimate relationship, and you're not getting that from your spouse because you're not letting your spouse do that. And so once someone does that and hasn't had that, it's awesome. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing about it is it's true. Like manipulators, gaslighters, abusers, like they think that they have to do this in order to get what they want. But sin leads to destruction, and that's what that is. Abuse is sin. Deception is sin. Manipulation is sin. Gaslighting it's a form of deception. So it's sin. It's creative sin. It's creative deception. but it leads to death and it leads to destruction. And so
Yeah.
choosing to repent, choosing to turn the other way and say, I'm not healthy. I need help. And I need Jesus to help me change. Of course, that you're going to live a better and more full and more free life when you're walking with the Lord. It's in light that there is joy and freedom. It's in Christ that there is joy and freedom, not in living in sin.
Yeah, and I think the hard thing, and that's anybody that's listening that knows they're in that situation, that they are a gaslighter, it's taking a risk. I get that
Mhm.
because you have been in control of everything, or you think you were. You really weren't, but you thought you were in control of everything. And to let go of that and humble yourself before God, I know it's a big step, but I also know you will never regret it
Yeah.
because
Mhm.
of what God is right there waiting for you to say, okay, I'm ready. Come on in.
Yeah.
And once you say that, he'll be all over you in a good
Yeah.
way.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. So you said, a couple who's experienced these repetitive patterns, they still have hope. They can have an awesome marriage. How do they do that?
Well, I think really probably just what we started talking about. I think, uh, I think you can go to your spouse and don't know what the response will be, but say, "Hey, I know where we are. This is what I've learned. I'm getting healthy. I'm going to a counselor now. I want our marriage to work, but I can't do it myself. Are you willing to take those steps?" And then I think prayer. You ask God to change their heart, to heal them. You pray that with someone over them, because I think at that point the change is only going to come through Christ.
Yeah.
I think, and your spouse is going to have to see Christ in you before she's able to trust you to continue to work on that relationship too. Um, you got to have God as your base and I think it's beginning. You've done well. The gaslighter has at getting the world's affirmation, but what you really want is God's affirmation. You've got to
Mhm.
have this creator of everything loves me enough, and I want to open myself up to that because you haven't
Yeah.
been. You just haven't
Yeah.
been.
Yeah. That's good. That's good. So what do we want to watch out for when it comes to real abuse here? Real verbal abuse or emotional abuse, spiritual abuse, and manipulation?
Oh, I think the heightened anxiety. I think there's a lot of anxiety that goes along with it. Um, Mental confusion, your mood instability. You're moving back and forth a lot. Probably some flashbacks of some of the painful events. I hear that that they'll begin to get those flashbacks, or even as they begin to get healthy, they'll have flashbacks that will send them back again. So it's a process. Um, and then this hypervigilance, I'm afraid of what's going to happen next. And so you're always on guard, which ties in with anxiety. But then it becomes, I think, not only the anxiety, but this, what do I do to keep this from happening? And so then you're trying to tiptoe around something to not, it's like there's a bomb and you're tiptoeing around, not trying to do anything. But then you look at it and the fuse is already lit. The bomb's going to go off again, no matter what you do. And you finally realize there's nothing I can do. This bomb is going to continue to go off because I
Yeah.
don't have the lighter.
Yeah. Oh, that's so hard. That's so hard. Yeah. And I think, in these situations, this is where you probably want to separate for a time
Yeah.
until the other person, your spouse, really repents and gets the help that they need, because you need to be safe. And verbal abuse is real, emotional abuse is real, mental abuse, all of those things. So other examples of what you might want to watch out for when we're talking about these really abusive things would be isolation, which we've talked about a little bit. So your friends are crazy, or your parents are crazy. We can't
Right.
spend time with them because, we need to set more boundaries with them. We shouldn't go over there at all. And it's interesting because they'll even like kind of turn it around on your friends being, again, it's unreasonable what they're doing, but they'll say like, it's your friends who are toxic. It's your friends who are crazy. It's your friends that you need to stop associating with, when really it's like, well, no, you're the abuser. You're the crazy one.
Exactly.
You're the one who needs help. And then I think setting up total reliance on them. This is something that I've seen a lot. And again, it usually is men who do this, but they'll say things like, and again, it sounds like they're being a supportive, loving husband, but they're like, "Oh, you don't have to work. Like, we'll make it work." And they are kind of always scheming to make sure like you're not making any money, you're not contributing, and then they make you feel bad about it. And they're like, "Oh no, you don't need to work. You need to do this," because then you feel like you can't get out, right? Like, well, where am I going to
Absolutely.
go? I don't have a house. Like everything's in his name, so that can be really
You're
dangerous.
trapped.
I think also claiming you're crazy and kind of sowing seeds of doubts in others, again, to protect themselves, which we've talked about a little bit. But so that they're the ones who are at church saying like, oh, pray for my spouse. She's just really struggling. She's emotionally imbalanced. She's irrational. And that way, when you come to call out problems or ask for help, people are like, oh, yeah, your husband already told us that you got issues. And they believe the first one that came to them, the charming one that came to them,
Absolutely.
which is really scary. And then I think if you make excuses a lot for like your spouse's behavior to friends and family, so yeah, he doesn't help out with this, but this is why, or he's really mean to he said that thing and that was really unkind, but here's why he did it. So
Yeah.
you're kind of making excuses for them. Or worse, if you're withholding information, if you find yourself withholding information from your family and friends so that you don't have to explain or make excuses for your spouse, that's dangerous. Keeping things in the dark is dangerous. If you have to hide your spouse's sin because it's so bad and it's so damaging and people would be like, hey, you need help, then that's a red flag that, hey, you need help.
Yeah.
So let's be honest about that and talk to people about that. Talk to your pastor about that. Talk to people at church about that. And most importantly, talk to a counselor about that and get the help you need.
Absolutely. One of the things we really haven't touched on that I've seen happen, and that's where he turns the kids against the wife. And he makes the kids feel like, yeah, the mom's just kind of crazy. Just kind of go along with her. It's okay, and things like that. So all of a sudden, your kids are framing you like your husband has you thinking the same things about you that your husbands make you think about you. That makes it really hard. And then you've really isolated. But what you said is so true. I see that they isolate you from everyone so they have total control over it. And then you're right. You don't have, you just feel guilty about going, I had one lady said, I just couldn't say something bad about him. And she was hard even in counseling to talk about it because she was so, she was afraid I'd think she was crazy, honestly.
Yeah. That's so hard. Yeah, and I know we keep saying like, he as if it like
We don't.
he could only be the gaslighter, but that's not true. Women, wives can
Yes.
absolutely be gaslighters. We kind of keep using that language, I think, because Dr. Kim and I's both last experience with it was a guy, but obviously women are guilty of this too. Like, don't email us, we know.
Yes.
And so we hear you. Absolutely. Husbands, you matter too, and you can absolutely be manipulated and gaslit. And so if that's you, we're talking to you too. You need help. You need to go to your pastor. You need to go to a counselor. You matter just as much. And no one deserves to be abused or manipulated.
Exactly. And guys, though, but nagging is not gaslighting.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah. So what should someone do if they do feel like the things we listed above about the real manipulation and abuse? What if they feel like they're being emotionally and psychologically abused? What's their next step?
I think it's just putting everything together that we talked about. Get help. If it's reaching out on a hotline, get help. We can post that in the notes. If you're somewhere there's a abuse center, and I think just realizing this is abuse. You may not have a bruise on your body. He may have never put a bruise, or she may never put a bruise on your body. But this is abuse. So you can go to the grief abuse center. They're not going to think, "Why are you here?" No, they're going to know why you're there because they've dealt with a lot of women like that. And then reach out to a counselor. Find someone at your church. I love what Christina said about that. Find a pastor at your church that you can talk in, that you trust, that you can confide in. But take a step forward to stop it.
Yeah, that's good. Well, this has been a heavy conversation, Dr. Kim.
It is.
What final piece of advice do you have for our listeners today?
It is heavy, and I think that we've talked about doing this podcast for a while, and just not sure how to approach it and everything. But I think Christina, in the role she plays in her church with Dylan, what I see as a counselor, it is a very real thing in our culture and society. I don't know if it's worse now than ever, but I kind of have a tendency to think it may be. And a lot of that, I think, just has to do with culture and what goes on in our world. So if you feel like you are in a situation with someone that's gaslighting you, that you do take a step to get help. You're not crazy. You need to find someone that can help you walk through that. And if you're a gaslighter, male or female, you'll never have the marriage that God wants for you with that kind of behavior. And so that you would take a step and say, I need help too.
Yeah, absolutely. I have two final things to leave our listeners with. One is don't feel bad about addressing your spouse's issue here if they're the ones who are gaslighting you. It says in Ephesians 4:29, don't use foul or abusive language. Let everything you say be good and helpful so that your words will be encouraging to those who hear them. If your spouse, I think a lot of times as Christians, we feel like we can't talk bad about our spouse or address our spouse's issue because like that's not kind, but that's not true. It is good and helpful. If your spouse is not doing things that are good and helpful to you, you need to address them and to speak the truth in love. So Jesus spoke the truth in love and to those who are wrong. He cleared out the temple because people were selling things in his father's house. So he spoke out against exploitation. He spoke out against misguidedness. He rebuked the disciples who tried to keep the little children from him. So he spoke the truth in love. You're not supposed to be treated poorly. You deserve respect in your marriage, and you deserve for your spouse to operate in a way that is good and helpful to you. If they're harming you, even if it's not physically, you can stand up to them, and it is wise and biblical to do that. Jesus set boundaries, and so can you. So here are just some quick examples of when Jesus said no to inappropriate behavior, aka boundaries. He said no to certain demands. He withdrew from the crowds who wanted to talk to him. It says that, and you can read more about that in Luke chapter 5. He fought his way through physical things too, which you could relate to abuse. So like if you think about in Luke chapter 4, when he fought his way through the crowd that was trying to throw him off of a cliff, like he fought his way out, like physically. He said no to baiting questions. So the religious leaders were asking and baiting him questions and trying to make him look foolish and trying to deceive him and to manipulate him. And he said, no, I'm not going to answer your question. Actually, you can read about that in Matthew chapter 21. He said no to mocking. Herod tried to mock him in Luke chapter 23, saying like, show us a sign that you're the Son of God. Sure. And he was mocking him, and Jesus was like, no, I'm not playing your games. And I could go on and on and on about different ways that Jesus set boundaries.
Yeah.
But don't feel bad about it. As a Christian, you can set boundaries. You can speak the truth in love about your spouse's issue, and you're not meant to be abused.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, how does the spouse know if it's abuse or it's bad behavior?
Now, there's a world of a difference. May take I train therapists to know the difference, but bad behavior, these are occasional lapses. I made a mistake from a decent, loving, husband who's gonna or wife who's gonna make the changes. Abuse, different story. It's never-ending destructive behavior from a dirtball. I mean, for lack of a better word, he's rarely going to change. He's not sorry, and it just never stops. It's a consistent breaking down of another person. So it's a class all by itself. Bad behavior, like I'm guilty of bad behavior just about every day with my wonderful wife because she's a woman. I understand her, but I'm sorry. We work it out.
Exactly.
Abusers, no.
No, they're never going to say those two words, I'm sorry.
No, they're not, because it's never their fault, right?
No, yeah, for them to say I'm sorry would be, I don't know what it'd mean to them, but doesn't fit their profile at all.
And if they do say it, it's lame, it's not a real apology, and let's move right on. But they don't mean it.
Let's get past that.
That's right. We're not going to talk about that. How dare you?
Yeah. Exactly. So what are some red flags that show us the difference between actual abuse and hurtful behaviors?
We've got, first of all, we have the never-ending pattern. That's the abuse. It's just not going to stop. It's a regular drumbeat. And the destructive properties, bad behavior here and there is not going to destroy you. It's disappointing. It's difficult, but we're hanging in there. And there's positive things. No, abuse is destructive. You're going to break down physically. We have the same thing, Kim. When you see a lady who's had it for 10 years, 20 years, 25 years, she's just a wreck physically.
Oh, I bet.
All the stress-induced problems you could imagine, immune system breaking down. Of course, emotional destruction, depressed, anxious, self-esteem shredded. We've got spiritual issues because they're wrestling with God. Why would God allow this? And they're prevented from serving him. And then, of course, the kids, just the little boys are going to become abusers because that's what they're being modeled. And mom taking it, and the little girls are going to date and marry abusers. So that's the defining line, just all the destructive things that happen.
I think so too. And I think my experience is when a wife realizes, sometimes it'll be what they realize is happening to the kids that will help them to take action. They may not do it for themselves, which
Right.
I want them to, but they may do it for the kids.
True. You've heard this too, Kim. They actually believe, and the church oftentimes will give them the wrong message. Well, it's always best for the kids if you stay in a marriage. No, not in this scenario, because they are being destroyed. And of course, you've seen this too. The abuser, the narcissistic abuser, is actually turning your kids against you.
Yes.
Oh my goodness! And so now they'll disrespect you, they'll abuse you. Oh man, I want to get them out before that happens. Yeah.
Yes, because I've seen it go that far. I know you have too. Where
Yeah,
then it's all,
yes.
yeah, it's like it's so difficult. So let's just talk a little bit about narcissism. What are the key signs? Kind of unpack that just a little bit.
Yeah, because almost all abusers, as you know, Kim, they're narcissists. This is a character disorder. It's deeply entrenched. Almost always goes back to childhood. Either they were spoiled rotten, or there's abuse involved, and they learned early on. There's this core of it's about me. I got to take care of myself. World-class selfishness. It is literally all about that person. Your needs, if you're the spouse, your needs don't even make their radar screen. And they really believe that if I'm the narcissist, if Sandy just meets my needs, well then I'll be happy, but then you'll be happy too, because your whole life should revolve around me. There is no empathy of any kind. If the wife is crying or upset over something, well, what's the matter with you? I could care less about you. There was no conscience, and it's forever your fault. It's always the other person's fault. There is no, I think I made a mistake here. I must have done something wrong. And this kind of person, they will not talk about any topic that they don't want to talk about. From small to large, it's a difficult thing. In a healthy marriage, if my Sandy wants to talk about something, I talk about it. I'm her loving husband. If it upsets her, hey, even if I don't get it at first, the narcissist will not do that. Silent treatment. I've had ladies who've had this too for days and weeks and months of silent treatment, punishing you because you had the nerve to bring up a topic, or blowing up in anger. But they're not going to deal with that topic. So that's what narcissism looks like, and it's ugly.
It really is, and I think sometimes I think narcissists they know how to get what they want, obviously, and it's always unhealthy. But I think the fact that sometimes they say the right thing, but just there's no follow through. It's almost like it's patting on the head and saying, well, here, I'm giving you just a little bit of a bone now, but then, just to pacify you, and then I'm going to be back doing what I've done.
That's exactly right. It's constantly pulling the rug. Promises made just to have the woman just leave you alone. But they're they believe their own lies, so they're persuasive. The woman, of course, being nurturing and loving and hopeful, thinks, well, maybe this time. Now, nope. It's like Charlie Brown and Lucy, but every fall she's holding the dumb football. And she says, this time, Charlie, I am not going to. And of course, he goes for it. Of course, he puts the football out of the way. Yeah, I'm telling these ladies, it's never going to stop. Stop believing he'll change. Assume he won't.
Let's talk about something that you mentioned just a minute ago. And that's where a woman feels it's not Christian to leave. It is, and maybe even in her church, people are saying, you can't leave, you don't leave. And my experience has been sometimes the guy's very involved in the church, and everybody in the church, all the leaders, think he's the greatest guy in the world. He shows up, he does things, he volunteers, he does all these things so that everybody in church thinks, and comes up to her and says, you've got the most wonderful husband in the world. And then she goes home, and it's confusing, and I think it's them always pointing at themselves, there's something wrong with me.
Right.
When there's not.
And very often, Kim, as you know, they were raised that way. A lot of these ladies come from their own abusive homes. They saw mom take it, and dad was abusive. So it's like, this is normal for them. And then, as you say, the church, these guys are wonderful on the outside, especially at church, even the neighborhood, do anything for other people. Behind closed doors, different story. And so the woman kind of knows, boy, if I have the nerve to mention this, they're not going to believe me. And I'll tell them, you're losing the PR battle. He's too good. He's been at it for years. But you're going to find some key people that do believe you. And a lot of pastors, you've had this too, Kim, if you don't walk into the pastor's office with a broken arm and a black eye, you're not going to get any action because they don't understand emotional abuse. And the guy, of course, lying his head off and will turn it back on the woman, and she'll be told, this isn't abuse. They'll minimize it, or it's your fault, Or the classic, if you just keep loving him, he'll change. That's true of a decent man. This isn't a decent guy. He's never going to change. So they have a lot. There's a lot of resistance I face, as you have too. Working with these ladies, I got to get them past that resistance so they can start taking some action.
Yeah, I think so. And I think the guys, when they're doing that, don't have any. They're not going to change. They don't. They're just kind of playing the game a little bit. And yet, I think one thing I've seen, it seems like some guys do a pretty good job of arranging. I don't know, their posse, their squad. They get a bunch of people that they make believe, or the way they portray themselves, that he couldn't be an abuser. He couldn't be. There really does have to be something wrong with her.
Right. Oh, yeah. And these narcissists, they will spend years developing that narrative. So by the time the lady speaks up, it's a done deal. That's why I say you have to develop a whole new support team. After you leave, new church, maybe some new friends, you got to get people that believe you. When I do these phone advice sessions with these ladies from across the country now, it's such a relief when I say, I believe you. I take the history, I believe you. Because nobody believes them.
Yes.
It's like, and so that's the beginning of, okay, I'm not crazy. Because a narcissist will drive you crazy. Absolutely, he will. Gaslighting, and making you doubt yourself at every turn. Yeah, man.
Well, and I think gaslighting has become at least a part of our culture now as our vocabulary. So at least I think it's put that on the table where people can at least understand what it is a little bit. Because I don't think we did not that long ago. I think there was a movie in the 40s on gaslighting, but I don't think anybody today watched that movie. So,
right.
We had to kind of bring that up. But I think that in itself, talk about gaslighting a little bit. Can you give a couple examples that someone might pick up on of how do I know if I'm being gaslighted?
This is a narcissist attempt, and it's really very effective over the course of months and years of making you doubt yourself, doubt what you think and believe, and believe that you're crazy. I had a guy, this was an older man in my office, this has been a couple years ago, and he's sitting there with his wife. And I realized early on he was a narcissist. I convinced her of that. And what he was doing was he was hiding her keys. He knew she was on the verge of exposing this to the family. He didn't want that. And so he's hiding her keys. And she'd say, "Where are my keys?" He was the one hiding them. But he said, "I don't know, honey." He was literally trying to drive her nuts. I said, "Ma'am, he's the one hiding your keys." She said, "You're kidding me." I said, "You go back home today and you hide his keys. We're going to see how he likes it." I mean, she had to get, and this was a sweet older woman. I said, you got to get tough. And of course, it's on and on. It's, you know what he just said in a conversation. You said, "Well, you said that." He'll say, "I didn't say that. I didn't mean that. I didn't do that." And he comes across very persuasive because he believes his own lies. He will deny what you know is true. You can have a video of the guy saying something, and you'll say, "I didn't say that. That video was doctored." I mean, so the woman starts to think, maybe it is me.
Sure.
No, it's not you, it's him.
Well, and I think especially when a woman's isolated, which I think a lot of times, like you were saying, a narcissist does, they try to isolate their spouse so they don't get to talk to anybody or share or have somebody say, "I think it may be something wrong with your husband, not you." And I think the same thing when you tell someone that's in that situation that you believe them, there is a change in their countenance that is amazing.
It is
because
the relief.
Nobody's ever believed them. Yeah.
Nope. And if they tried to talk to the pastor or even family or friend, they get no, this can't be true. And denial in the Christian community is very strong. We don't want to really go there. We don't want to believe there's abuse in our church.
Yeah.
Well, there is. The numbers are just about the same as in secular society. So we're trying to open pastors' eyes with this Enough is Enough book too.
I agree, and I think it's, and I'm not sure why. I think you're right. Sometimes pastors are too busy, or they don't know, or that the guy's so good at it that they just believe him.
Yep.
Yeah.
These guys as you said, Tim, they'll cozy up to the pastor. He's on the finance committee. He's an elder. He's a deacon. He mows the lawn at the church. He is there. He's greeting people, and so this is a key person. Well, he's got to be godly.
Exactly.
Not necessarily.
No. What is wrong with you, lady? I mean, they may not say that, but that's kind of I'm sure goes through some of their minds sometimes.
Right. And of course, he'll have an answer if he even get that far. If the pastor meets with the guy, he'll have an answer for every single thing the woman has said.
Yes.
And they're quick on their feet. They lie like breathing. So it's like, that's not true. That's not true. And he'll create a scenario where, oh, my poor wife, Pastor, she's just not all mentally there. She's got these issues. And he starts believing that.
Yeah.
Oh,
Absolutely.
man. Yeah, that's sad.
And I think what you said is true too. The quick responses. It's where I've seen women and they just get so confused with that they just either start crying or shut down, and then they're ridiculed for doing that.
Exactly. I'll tell these ladies, he's setting you up. He's driving you crazy. When you blow it, you're hysterical, you're angry, you're losing it. Then he says, look at you. What's the matter with you? Well, the guy set the whole thing up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So why do women stay? I mean, I know we're going to have women listening to this. They're going to be trying to, or is it bad behavior? Is it abuse? They kind of, as we're talking, they think, man, I may be married to a narcissist. Why do they stay?
Boy, I've seen a number of reasons, Kim. We get back to the kids. They really believe, until we tell them different, it's better for the kids if I stay. No, not true. They're being destroyed, and your relationship with them is being destroyed. They will think, well, I can't make it on my own. I'm dependent.
Yeah.
Very often they're dependent, and financially, how can I possibly? I say, look, you take a year, take 2 years. I don't care. Start the process. This is America. You can make it on your own. But they think, I can't possibly do that. And of course, then they're fighting the church. Very often the message is, you have to submit. The submissive passages are used to beat the woman over the head. This does not apply to serious sin. It does not. You're not submit to a sinner like this. And of course, the self-esteem is shattered. The identity's gone. And so they think, boy, I'm just stuck. Here I am. And of course, they'll be told too, you have no biblical reason to separate or divorce. That's also not true. There are exceptions, and this is one of them.
I don't think God ever expects anybody to be in an abusive situation and
No,
stay there. I mean,
no.
that's not consistent with what Jesus did when he was here. It's not consistent with what God tells us to do.
Absolutely isn't. We've got clear biblical teaching on that, and we also have examples. So I think God's made it clear. But the pastors I talk with aren't reading those passages right. They just don't get it.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. So what would you say to a woman that you're talking to, and you kind of talk through, and obviously she's married to a narcissist. How would you what would you encourage her next step to be?
Well, number one, this will shock you, Kim. Read this incredible book, Enough is Enough.
Yes.
A step-by-step plan. You knew that was coming. To leave an abusive relationship with God. So I say, look, with an open mind. Now, it's a secret plan. He doesn't have it sent to a friend, get the ebook. It's on Audible. Look, but with an open mind, read that book, because that's like the first step. Then I say you have to make it a matter of prayer. And if you pray, God, reveal the truth, he'll do that. He'll find ways to do it. And then find somebody. May not be your pastor or somebody in your circle of friends. Maybe it's your dad. Maybe it's a supportive. Because a lot of these ladies won't even tell their own people the truth.
Right.
You find somebody you got to tell the truth that you know loves you and will believe you. And that begins the beginning of a support system. So those are the initial steps. And I say, look, there's no hurry. You're not leaving tomorrow. You're not ready to leave now. You're healing. You've got emotional work to do, support team, financial piece, get the kids ready. This is going to take you months. But start the process, and I'll help guide you through, and with a support team. So those are the initial steps to get them out. It seems insurmountable, but it's not.
Well, I think that support, all of those are important, but a support team, I think, is essential for them, because, I had a couple a few years ago, and he had convinced his spouse's parents that something was wrong with their daughter. And so she didn't have her parents to go to. Now, they finally came around, but that, to me, it was how good this guy was at convincing people that I'm okay and she's not, and I know it's your daughter, and we're going to help her, and I just wanted you to know.
Yeah. Oh, I've seen that too. Talk about insidious and really evil. That's evil. You always support your wife and you hold her up. They just undercut her. It's incredible to turn your own people against the person. Oh, I'm pretty good at getting people mad. So righteous anger is also a key here. And they don't want to get angry. I say, you're not going to say anything to him. You're going to manage him because we don't want him to be tipped off. But you can be good and mad. And if I can get him mad, then we're getting somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've kind of talked around church and everything. What does the Bible say about leaving an abusive marriage?
God has been very gracious to give us clear teaching, Kim. Matthew 18:15 through 17 is clear. There are no caveats. If there's a serious sinner, there's confrontation. Now, these ladies have mentioned things for 20, 25 years, 15 years. So you've already gone through those steps. The end stage there with the serious sinners, you get away from it. That clearly indicates separation. Whether it's someone in the body of Christ or a friend or your husband. We've got Romans 16:17. Shun all those who cause divisions. Okay, well, same principle. 1 Corinthians 5, there's that person in the church that was involved in outrageous sexual sin. Well, he was given a chance, and then Paul said, remove him from the fellowship and have nothing to do with her. That's your husband. That's the principle. 2 Timothy, I love 2 Timothy 3, 1 through 5. We talk about a great description of narcissism. Oh my goodness. And the end stage of he's this and he's selfish and he's this and he's addicted and he's in sin is have nothing to do with that person. Okay. That's the kind of person we're talking about. So that's the clear teaching. Then we have the examples in the Bible, Abigail and Nabal, chief among them. She was married to a horrible narcissist, Nabal. He was selfish. He was abusive. He was a drunkard. He was an alcoholic. And she was faced with having her entire household killed by David. And so she secretly gathered the goods and saved the day. A woman in that day never did that. Never. Because she had no right. She was property.
Right.
Nabal could have taken her out and killed her in front of the entire community, and people would have said, well, okay, he's the wife. God ended up taking him out. We have the story of Esther, which is beautiful. She had two narcissists on her hands. I mean, man, yeah. Haman, who had all the cards, wanted to kill all the Jews, including her. And then, of course, the king himself, awful narcissist. And she, with some help, of course, she was able to, God got her out of that situation, spared her. Haman was killed. I mean, God is sending us clear messages. And those ladies had even less chance than a lady in America today, much less.
Sure. Just like you said, they were property. They just didn't really matter much.
Right.
And women, and our women do matter. They matter a lot.
Yeah.
Do you feel like there are, in most cities, safe places for women to go if it really does get to that point? Then do you encourage a woman to go if it's really where it becomes physical? It could be harmful that she would leave.
Yeah, there are. And I'm aware of those resources, of course, in my area, and almost all therapists are. And it might be a secular organization. At that point, I don't care. You need safety, and there are principles. So if it's physical violence, yeah, you're leaving today. He can bang your head against the wall. You had brain damage. Happened to one lady I saw. One lady lost an eye because he threw a lamp at her. She didn't leave in time. So yeah, that we'll circle the wagons. We're gonna have to speed the program up. But there are resources. You'll be protected, and then you'll stay separated and go through the steps.
Yeah, I think almost anywhere people live, there's going to be a resource. There may be a little while or the next town or next city, but there's going to be a safe place for them to go.
Right.
And it's okay to go there.
Yeah, there are shelters. We could use the same thing, but for the emotional abuse. But physical, they're out there. Oh yeah.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times narcissists don't get physical, maybe because they don't want a chance of any kind of outward sign that I have abused this woman.
Right. So that's rare with these guys, but boy, it does happen. And man, if that happens, yeah, you're leaving now. Get your kids and get out. Call the police. We're talking restraining order. We're talking to police involvement. He might lose his job. So what? We're trying to get his attention and protect you. Absolutely. God forbid. I'll tell these ladies, well, yeah, even if you're killed or one of the children is seriously harmed physically, at least he keeps his job. I mean, come on. Don't go there.
Exactly. So one of the things that I see people, I hear from women sometimes, they make the step, they finally have separation, he's out, but he's working so hard. He's changing. I know he's changing, and it's been 4 days and he wants to come back, and I know he's changed. What do you say to somebody like that?
I say be very skeptical.
Yeah.
He doesn't like to lose. And if he hasn't, and no narcissist ever changes in 4 days. I'm sorry, not going to happen. So he's blowing smoke. And you give me 4 months of consistent, 5 months, 6 months of consistent. And I've got a whole list of things in the book, as you know, Kim, that he's going to have to do to prove you're going to stay separated. True repentance never wavers. And I'll say, look, just for practice, and I want you to say no anyway, but if you say no to him coming back, let's see how he responds. He'll revert right back. How dare you? I've seen the light. I've changed. No, you haven't. No, you haven't. And I'll tell you, look, even if he has changed, he hasn't. You're not ready. You haven't healed. You're not strong
Absolutely.
enough. So hey, let's get. This is about you now and your kids, not about him anyway. I'll tell these guys, and if I happen to see them or the woman, this is 7 or 8 months of work he's got to do. You're separated. Then when
Hard
he gets
work.
that done and he's proven it, you're still separated. Now we're going to start some couple work when you both are ready. But even that's going to be the first part of that is him helping you heal from what he's done to you. So this is a long way out. Don't buy it. I had a lady just this last week take a man back, and it took, I think it was on within 20 minutes. Literally, he was back in the home and he was punishing her for kicking him out. Oh man! I said, "Ma'am, let's get back on track." She knows she made a mistake.
Absolutely. And one thing, and we talked some about how God worked in the Bible and in situations. I think if a wife prays that God will let her know what's true and what's not true with her spouse, that God will show that.
He will. Oh, I've seen that happen hundreds of times. With an open mind, God show me, he'll show you. Because he doesn't want you in there. I say, not even does he, God's not just okay with you leaving, he wants you to leave.
Yes.
I think it's clear at this level of abuse.
I agree. Totally agree. In the book, Enough is Enough, you describe tough love approach to helping abused spouses. Why is that the best way to help them?
Boy, it's about the only way I've ever seen work, Kim. These guys rarely change, but if they do change, in my experience, it's only when you're not tolerated anymore. There's a line in the sand, and you're not going to deal with it anymore. And frankly, in my experience, there's a separation. There's a few cases I've had where that hasn't been necessary, but even in those cases, the lady had had enough, and she was strong enough. She had a job. She was tougher, and she hung in there with him. But even so, I'm not taking any more abuse. I'm not. The passive, I hope he changes. I'm still loving him. I'm putting up with this. Literally, never. He's never going to change. He's not going to wake up one day and go, I'm an abuser. I think I'll change. Not going to happen. He's going to keep doing it because you're taking it.
Yeah.
And it's your fault anyway. So I think the tough love is always the way to go. Almost every lady fights me on that initially because they don't want to do the tough love. Can't you see my husband? Can't you work with my husband? I say, no, I don't have the patience for that. We're not going to do couple work, waste of time at this stage. I've got people that I can refer your husband to if he wants to do the work, but that's going to be after you're gone.
Yeah.
Because it's dangerous to stay. He'll punish you. He'll punish you severely if you take that kind of a stand. He'll make your life a living hell. So we don't want that. Better to be gone.
No. Yes, absolutely. And it just takes time. Sometimes I think for a woman to get there, but I do feel like once a woman gets there, she's there most of the time. Now you mentioned somebody let him back, but I think women give and give and give, and when they finally get there, it's like, okay, I am done.
Yeah, right. And that's a good thing.
Absolutely.
They will take all kinds of, when they close the door, now we're talking. And that's where I want them to be. I'm trying to speed that process if I can, so they can limit the damage to their kids and their lives and give the guy a chance to change.
I don't know if I've seen these stats, but I would imagine statistics of boys growing up in an abusive home like that probably turn out to be abusers, or at least there's something they've got to fight or work through because that was their model, that was their normal, all of those kind of things. And then for a daughter, I mean, the last thing I think, hopefully, even a narcissist doesn't want his daughter to be treated that way, but maybe.
Yeah, I think they're so jaded they don't even care, and they don't get it, and they wouldn't see it as abuse. Oh yeah, I've seen that happen so often with these older ladies that come in. They've been 40, 45 years. It's generational. Their kids have turned against them, and the daughters have abusers. Their boys are abusers, and they've turned on her. She can't see the grandkids, and the narcissist wins. He's the one they're attached to.
Sure.
Oh my goodness. And they think, I say, I know, ma'am, it's okay. Let's start from where we can start from. And you're still better off leaving, even if they all turn on you. Over time, maybe they can get it because you're making the situation clear. If you stay, they think you're fine with it.
Yeah. I think just narcissists don't show empathy. And I think that's a big red flag with someone. I mean, when I've had that happen in my office and the wife is just pouring her heart out and the guy looks like he's I don't know, watching Netflix or something. Just no response at all, no empathy,
Could care less.
no,
Right.
no. And then the lady quits, and then she feels stupid because I just poured my heart out, and this guy didn't even scoot closer on the couch to me at all.
Didn't reach out for the hand. Yeah, right.
No.
Those are
Didn't
all
even-
signals that you can pick up on and go, oh, we have a narcissist on our hands. I can't wait to get that guy out of my office. I'm going to see her in the next session, just her. I'll probably never see him again. I'm going to see her and try to get her on board.
Yeah, I agree.
And I tell these ladies, look, tell the narcissist, your husband, that you've got all kinds of problems. He'll buy that because he thinks you're nuts anyway. And you're going to be doing work with me. What he won't know is I'm getting you strong enough to leave him.
Yes.
And he'll find out down the road.
Yeah, that's so good. Because it does take time. I mean, you've got a whole mindset. You mentioned ladies that have been married 40 years or so, and that's a long time to be in that situation. There's got to, and God can do that. It's renewing your mind, it's changing things, it's realizing you're worth more than that.
You
So
are.
much more than that.
These ladies come back to me, and once they've left, and their health is often dramatically improved, and they can sleep at night, and there's peace in the home, and the emotional health is coming back. They're closer to God. They're working on the relationship with the kids. That takes time sometimes, but everything is changed. He's still a narcissist, and he'll make you suffer for leaving him. But you know what? At least it's at a distance, and you got some control.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And just getting past the fear that because there are people that will come alongside her and that they will be with her, just finding those people.
Yeah, they're out there. They absolutely are out there.
Absolutely.
I'll tell you, if it's not your pastor, find a local pastor at another church who gets it on the QT. And then once you leave, that's where you're going. You'll go to that church.
Absolutely. Where you're received and accepted and not put down because you got a divorce or a separation.
Right.
Things like that.
Yeah.
So someone today is probably listening. They're thinking, oh my gosh, I just listened in. I always listen to Awesome Marriage podcast. They're talking about my marriage today. Step one. We've kind of talked a little bit about that, but for some people that when they first hear this and begin to kind of think through it, maybe a counselor, what would be the next step for them?
I'd have them first, you hit to your knees. God is speaking to you through this podcast. God has used it, and he's using it now. But make it a matter of prayer. God, if this is resonating, help me. If he's abusive, please let me know. God will confirm that. And when I say on the QT, just start writing down, and you might need a forest full of paper, but start writing down the things he's done to you that have been harmful, that have been hurtful, things he said, things he's done. And it might be 20, 25, it might be 100. Just start writing them down. Because these ladies operate in denial, and they just got to get past it and get past it. Well, tomorrow's a new day. No, it's going to be this is Groundhog Day. It's the same dumb, abusive day. So start writing it down and reach out to somebody that knows and loves you. Tell them the truth. And I would get the Enough is Enough book. I wrote it for you. I tell these ladies, your picture's on the front. You're a photo, a nice photo of you.
Yes.
You're happy. You're free. I'm telling you, read the book. Those are the initial steps. And then you begin the process, and it will take a while of just strengthening yourself and taking all the preparation steps I have in the book, and then you're going to get out. That's the light at the end of the tunnel.
I think so too. But if you're listening today, the worst thing you could do if this describes you is do nothing, right?
Right. Yeah, that's end stage. No hope. You're going to be destroyed. Yeah.
Get the book, get it on tape, put a brown cover on it if you have to, but he's not going to pay attention to what you're reading anyway, probably.
No, he doesn't care about you.
He doesn't care. Yeah.
No. You could carry around a unicorn, and the guy wouldn't notice because he doesn't care about you. Yeah, so you'll probably be safe. Just keep it in your purse or in a safe place. Yeah, and it's an easy read, but it's powerful. It'll lay out defining, the abuser, why you can get out, why God wants you to get out, and then how to get out.
I think what you and I do, we get a lot of rewards, but to me, one of the greatest rewards is when you see a woman gain strength, and she's able and know that it's okay with God, and she's able to do what she needed to do a long time ago. Now she's ready to do it.
Oh, it's a beautiful thing, isn't it, Kim?
It just makes me want to smile and cry and everything all at once. It's just like,
Me too.
oh yeah, you and your kids are going to be okay.
It's beautiful. And really, I'll tell them, and this is the God's truth. I don't think he's going to change. Don't expect it. But if he might, he just might. It's his only shot. You come back to an empty house and your wife has left you, you're going to find out if he loves you or not, and the Lord, and if he's going to change.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And just be patient, take time.
Yeah.
And I think once you make these steps, hopefully you begin to look at him in a different way than you have in the past.
Yeah, right.
And to realize he's really sick. There's some
He is.
real bad
Yeah.
stuff there.
Yeah, there is. He's got a ton of work to do if he wants to do it. Yeah.
Absolutely.